There's a specific way people carry student debt that has nothing to do with the monthly payment. It's the number they stopped looking at. Not because they forgot it, but because looking at it stopped feeling useful. The balance is $40,000, or $38, $500, or $43, $200. Close enough to $40,000 that none of what follows changes. Here's the problem with that number. It's the least important one. There are 3 numbers inside every student loan. Most borrowers have only ever been shown one. This video is going to show all 3 using a standard $40,000 loan as the example, because the second number is worse than most people realize, and the third number is the one that was never on any disclosure form you signed. By the time this is over, the math will be complete. Not as a reason to panic, as a reason to decide. Those are different things, and the difference matters. So let's start with what everyone knows. The number on the statement, $40,000. That's the number that gets cited in headlines. That's the number that gets compared to a car, a down payment, a year of rent, and that framing, $40,000, manageable in isolation, is the first place the math gets distorted, because $40,000 was never really the price. It was the opening bid. Let's be precise about this. When $40,000 in federal student loans is disbursed, the borrower is given a principal balance. What they are rarely shown, clearly at the time of signing, is the total cost of that principal across the life of the repayment plan they're about to enter. Those are 2 different numbers, and the gap between them is where most of the financial damage lives. The $40,000 funded something real, a program, a credential, a set of years. Whether that investment paid off in employment terms is a separate conversation, and one this channel has covered in depth. But the cost of the debt itself, independent of what it funded, is something most borrowers have never sat down and calculated completely. Not because they couldn't, because no one built that calculation into the moment they were being asked to sign. That is the structural problem. The information existed. The requirement to show it clearly did not. So let's build the calculation now, starting with what most people do know, the face value. Then moving to what most people have never added up, the total repayment cost. Then arriving at the number almost no one has ever seen applied to their own situation, the opportunity cost, the third number, the one that completes the full price tag. Now let's talk about what the interest actually does. On a standard 10-year federal repayment plan, a $40,000 loan at a 6.5% interest rate, which is close to the current federal undergraduate loan rate, produces a monthly payment of approximately $454. That monthly payment across 120 months adds up to $54,480. The face value was $40,000. The actual cost of repaying it under a standard plan is closer to $54,500. That's $14,500 in interest, paid for the privilege of spreading $40,000 across a decade. Now here is where it gets more complicated, and where the math gets worse for a large percentage of borrowers. Many graduates with $40,000 in debt cannot comfortably afford $454 a month, especially in the first 3 to 5 years, when entry-level salaries compress what's actually available. So they do the thing the system offers as relief. They enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. Income-driven repayment lowers the monthly payment. It does not lower the total cost. In most cases, it raises it. On a 20-year income-driven plan, the same $40,000 loan at 6.5% accumulates significantly more interest before it's paid off. The total repayment figure moves from $54,500 to somewhere between $62,000 and $67,000, depending on income growth, recertification, and plan structure. That's the second number, not $40,000. Closer to $55,000 to $67,000 depending on the repayment path chosen. The math was never hidden. Nobody just showed it to you. And that second number, on its own, is enough to change how most people think about this decision. But it is still not the complete price tag, because the most significant cost of this debt doesn't appear anywhere on the loan statement. It appears in the compound growth that never happened. In the financial life, the monthly payment displaced. That's the third number, and it's the one that tends to change everything. Here's the question that almost no loan counselor, financial aid officer, or college recruiter has ever been required to answer clearly. What would $40,000 have been worth at the end of 30 years if it had been invested instead of borrowed? The S&P 500 has averaged approximately 7% annual returns over the last 30 years, adjusted for inflation. That's a conservative figure. It's the number most retirement planning tools use as their baseline. If $40,000 had been placed in a broad index fund at age 18 and left untouched for 30 years at a 7% average annual return, it would be worth approximately $304,000. Let that land for a moment. Not $40,000, not $54,000 in total repayment, $304,000, the 30-year value of that same money redirected. The debt didn't cost $40,000. It cost the gap between $67,000 in total repayment and $304,000 in foregone compound growth. That gap is roughly $237,000 to $260,000 depending on repayment plan. That is the complete price tag. That is what was never on the disclosure form. That is the number that the conversation about just $40,000 in loans was always missing. Now, and this is important, the goal here is not to produce dread. Dread is the enemy of a deliberate decision. The goal is to produce clarity, because here's what that third number actually means. The decision to borrow $40,000 for a credential was never a $40,000 decision. It was a $250,000 plus decision. And it was made, in most cases, by a 17 or 18-year-old who was shown one number and handed a pen. That is not a character flaw. That is an information failure. And information failures have a specific remedy, the information, which is now in front of you. If you want to run this math for your own exact situation, your specific loan amount, your interest rate, your repayment plan, there's a pre-built calculator in the description. It compares your actual total cost against 5 specific alternative paths, and it gives you a number to work with, not a direction, a number. That's the link in the description and in the pinned comment. So what does this number mean for the decision in front of you? Knowing the real number doesn't change what's owed, but it changes every decision that comes after. And those decisions look different depending on where in this process you're standing. If the debt is already signed, the third number clarifies the cost of inaction. Specifically, the cost of staying on a repayment plan without understanding what each additional year of that plan is actually displacing. The calculation you just ran is the starting point for evaluating whether income-driven repayment, public service loan forgiveness, or aggressive early repayment changes the gap. Those are 3 different paths with 3 different math outcomes. Knowing your real number is what makes the comparison meaningful. If the debt isn't signed yet, this is the disclosure that should have been part of the original conversation. The ROI question, what does this credential actually produce in employment terms, set against what the complete cost of this debt will be over 30 years, is a question worth answering before the pen touches the paper, not after. Now let's answer the objection that's probably present at this point. The math is done. I already signed. What's the point of knowing this now? Here's what the point is. The number you now have is not a verdict, it is a coordinate. It tells you where you are in the landscape, specifically enough to make the next decision based on your actual situation, not on a vague sense that the debt is bad and a hope that ignoring it will make it more manageable. Avoidance does not reduce the opportunity cost. It just delays the calculation while the gap continues to grow. Knowing the number, all 3 of them, is what closes the avoidance loop. And closing the avoidance loop is what makes a deliberate next step possible. That's a solvable problem, not comfortable, not simple, but specific. And specific is something you can work with. The video ran the math on a standard example. If you want to run it on your own exact number, your loan, your rate, your plan, the calculator in the description is built for exactly that. What was the moment you actually sat down and ran the real math on your debt? And what did that number do to how you thought about the decision that produced it? So here's where this lands. The real cost of $40,000 in student debt is not $40,000. On a standard repayment plan, it's closer to $54,000. On an income-driven plan extended to 20 years, it moves toward $67,000. And the 30-year opportunity cost of that money, the compound growth it displaced, brings the complete price tag to somewhere north of $300,000. That is not a scare number. That is the actual number, the one that was always true, the one that just wasn't required to appear on the form you signed. The next time someone tells you that $40,000 in student debt is manageable, that everyone has loans, that it's just part of the process, you now have a better answer than a feeling. You have the math. and the math says the price tag was never what it appeared to be. That doesn't mean the decision was wrong for everyone who made it. It means the decision was made without the complete information. And the people who are now making it, or reconsidering the path forward, deserve to have all three numbers before they decide anything. You have them now. That's what this was for. The math was never hidden. Nobody just showed it to you. Keep that.